The Variant Empire's flagship, Eternal Dominion, drifted silently above the conquered world of Bracken. Its sleek obsidian hull absorbed the light from the system's dying sun, making it appear like a void against the starry backdrop. Commander Park stood with perfect posture on the command deck, hands clasped behind his back as he watched the planet below. The once vibrant blue-green world now bore scars of orbital bombardment, dark patches visible even from space. High Commander, the last pockets of Bracken resistance have been eliminated, Officer Kim reported, approaching with a data tablet. His uniform remained perfectly pressed, despite having been on duty for 20 hours straight. Their fleet was completely destroyed. Ground forces surrendered within 3 hours of our landing. Commander Park nodded without emotion. Casualties. Minimal, sir. 7 troops lost. 18 wounded. 3 fighters damaged beyond repair. Acceptable. Park turned from the viewport and took the tablet, scanning the numbers with practiced efficiency. Another victory for the Variant Empire. Another civilization brought to heel. The pattern had repeated itself countless times over the past century. Begin resource extraction immediately. I want mining operations established within 48 hours. Kim bowed slightly. Already underway, sir. Park handed back the tablet. This conquest had been even easier than the last. The Brackens had developed interesting shield technology, but like all others before them, their defenses had crumbled under the sustained assault of Variant ion cannons. The weapons were the Empire's greatest advantage. Energy beams that disrupted molecular bonds at the subatomic level, rendering conventional shields useless. No known defense could withstand more than 3 direct hits. Status of the planetary government, Park asked, moving to the central holographic display that showed a detailed map of the system. The ruling council has been detained. The population centers are under control. Standard occupation protocols are being implemented. Kim's voice remained flat, the routine of conquest so familiar it had become mundane. Good. Prepare my shuttle. I will personally accept their surrender. As Kim left to arrange the shuttle, Officer Yoon approached with another report. Her steps were quick and purposeful. Sir, long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in Sector 47. Park frowned. Sector 47 bordered the edge of charted space, an area of little strategic value. What kind of activity? Unknown, sir. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database. She handed him a separate tablet showing a waveform analysis. It appeared briefly 3 days ago, then disappeared. It reappeared 6 hours ago, stronger this time. Park studied the readings with growing interest. The Variant Empire had catalogued the energy signatures of every known species in the galaxy. An unknown reading meant one of 2 things, either a new natural phenomenon, or something else. Could it be a weapon test from the Alliance? He asked, referring to the loose coalition of species that still resisted Variant rule. The Alliance had been pushed to the far reaches of the galaxy, their territories shrinking with each passing year. Unlikely, sir. The signature originated from beyond the galactic boundary. Park's eyes narrowed. Beyond? You mean intergalactic? Yes, sir. Whatever created this energy signature, it came from outside our galaxy. The commander's mind raced with possibilities. In the 3,000 years of recorded Variant history, no contact had ever been made with extragalactic species. Their scientists had theorized that the energy requirements for intergalactic travel were simply too great for any civilization to overcome. Show me the exact coordinates, Park ordered. The main view screen shifted to display a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy's outer rim. The pulsing red dot marked the location of the energy signature. It was positioned just beyond the galactic edge, in the vast emptiness between galaxies. Dispatch a scout vessel immediately, Park ordered. I want continuous monitoring of that region. If the signature appears again, I want to know everything about it. Yes, sir, Yoon replied, already inputting commands into her console. Park returned to the viewport, but his thoughts were no longer on the conquered world below. Something was stirring at the edge of known space, and for the first time in decades, he felt a twinge of genuine curiosity. Across the galaxy, on the small world of Narration, the mood was somber. Narration served as the current headquarters of the Alliance of Free Worlds, though that title felt increasingly hollow with each passing month. Representatives from 12 different species gathered in an underground chamber, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. "Bracken has fallen," announced Admiral Jin, a veteran of 30 years of warfare against the variant. His weathered face showed the strain of too many defeats and too few victories. Their fleet was destroyed. Their defense grid collapsed within minutes of engagement. Murmurs rippled through the gathered representatives. Bracken had been one of their stronger allies, with technology that had shown promise against variant weapons. "How many escaped?" asked Counselor Tai, her scaled skin reflecting the blue light. "Less than 20,000. 3 transport ships managed to slip away during the initial assault. They're en route to our outpost in the Maran Nebula." 20,000 from a population of billions, someone whispered. Admiral Jin continued grimly. "With Bracken gone, the variant now control the entire Orion Arm. Our territory has been reduced to the outer spiral, and we're losing ground daily." "We should negotiate," suggested one representative, his voice trembling. "Perhaps we can secure favorable terms." "There are no favorable terms with the variant," Jin interrupted sharply. "You've seen what happened to worlds that surrendered. Strip mining, forced labor, cultural erasure. Is that what you want for your people?" The chamber fell silent. They all knew the truth of his words. The variant didn't seek allies or subjects. They wanted resources and obedience. Species that submitted willingly were treated marginally better than those who resisted, but the end result was always the same: complete subjugation. "What options remain?" Counselor Tai asked quietly. "Our fleets are scattered. Our weapons are ineffective against their ion technology. Each day, more of our worlds fall." Before Jin could answer, a young officer rushed into the chamber. "Admiral, we've detected something." All eyes turned to the newcomer. "Report," Jin commanded. "Our deep space array picked up an unusual energy signature, sir. It's unlike anything we've ever recorded." The officer hurried to the central console and plugged in a data crystal. The holographic display changed to show a series of waveforms and readings. "Where did this come from?" Jin asked, studying the data with intense focus. "That's the strange part, sir. It originated from beyond the galaxy." The chamber erupted in surprised conversations. Jin raised a hand for silence. "Explain," he demanded. "The signature appeared briefly 3 days ago at the galaxy's edge, then vanished. It reappeared 6 hours ago, stronger and more defined. Our analysts believe it's artificial in nature." "A ship?" Tai asked, leaning forward. "That's our best guess. If it is, it's using propulsion technology completely different from anything in our database. And it's heading inward, sir, toward our galaxy." Jin exchanged glances with the other council members. After centuries of isolation, the idea of contact with an extragalactic civilization seemed almost mythical. Could it be a variant trick? Someone suggested. The young officer shook his head. "We intercepted variant communications. They've detected it too and seem equally confused." For the first time in years, a flicker of hope appeared in Jin's eyes. If there's a civilization out there with technology the variant don't understand, it could change everything. Tai finished his thought. Jin straightened his uniform and made a decision. "Direct all available sensor arrays to that region of space. I want continuous monitoring. And prepare our fastest scout ship. If this visitor enters our galaxy, I want to make contact before the variant do." As the meeting adjourned with renewed purpose, Jin remained at the console, studying the mysterious readings. After decades of retreat and defeat, the Alliance had been on the verge of collapse. Their resources were dwindling, their territories shrinking, their hope fading. But now, A signal from beyond the stars had appeared. Something new, something unknown, something the variant couldn't immediately destroy or conquer. For the first time in a very long time, Jin allowed himself to feel something dangerous. Hope. The galaxy stood on the edge of change. Neither the mighty Variant Empire nor the desperate Alliance could predict what was coming. But as the unknown visitor drew closer to the galaxy's edge, one thing became certain. The long-established order was about to face its greatest challenge. The TSS Valiant emerged from hyperspace with a flash of blue light. The massive battleship's engines hummed as it slowed to standard speed. Stars unfamiliar to human eyes dotted the viewport, arranged in patterns no Earth astronomer had ever catalogued. This was the edge of an entirely new galaxy, and the Valiant was the first human vessel to reach it. Captain Lee took a deep breath as he stood on the bridge. At 52, he was older than most spaceship captains, his hair already showing streaks of gray. But his eyes remained sharp and alert, taking in both the wonder of their achievement and the practical realities of their mission. "System check complete," Officer Choi announced from his station. The young man's fingers moved confidently across his console, all systems operating at optimal levels. Shields at full capacity. Weapons systems ready. "Excellent." Lee nodded. The Valiant represented 20 years of Earth's best engineering efforts. The ship combined traditional human ingenuity with technological advances derived from the mysterious artifact discovered on Mars 15 years earlier. Its most impressive feature was its shield system, which operated on principles still not fully understood by the engineers who had built it. "Position confirmed, Captain," said Navigator Kang. "We are at the coordinates specified by Mission Control. We have successfully reached the Andromeda Galaxy." A moment of silence fell over the bridge as the reality of their accomplishment sank in. Humans had crossed the vast emptiness between galaxies, a journey previously thought impossible. Lieutenant Song broke the quiet with unexpected news. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple distress signals." Lee turned toward the communications officer, surprised. "Distress signals? From where?" Song's fingers moved rapidly across her display. "Multiple sources, sir. They're coming from approximately 3 light minutes from our position. The signals are using simple radio waves, but the patterns indicate artificial origin rather than natural phenomena." "Put it on speakers," Lee ordered. The bridge filled with the sound of crackling static, punctuated by bursts of an alien language. Rapid, clicking sounds interspersed with longer tones. "Translation software is working on it, sir," Song reported. "Preliminary analysis suggests these are emergency broadcasts. Multiple vessels in distress." Lee's expression grew serious. "Navigation. Plot a course to the source of those signals. Lieutenant Song, continue working on translation. Officer Choi, maintain defensive readiness." "Course plotted, sir," Kang confirmed. "ETA 4 minutes at standard drive." "Proceed," Lee ordered. The Valiant moved forward, its massive engines pushing the kilometer-long vessel through space with surprising grace. As they approached the coordinates, the tactical display began showing multiple heat signatures. "I'm detecting 17 smaller vessels," reported Tactical Officer Ba. Her usually calm voice carried an edge of concern. "They appear to be civilian ships based on their engine outputs and lack of weapons signatures. They're moving in an erratic pattern, consistent with evasive maneuvers." "And pursuing them?" Lee asked, already suspecting the answer. 3 larger vessels, Captain. Heavily armed based on energy readings. They're firing on the smaller ships. One of the smaller vessels has already been disabled." Lee studied the tactical display. The situation was clear. The 17 smaller ships were fleeing, while 3 larger, predatory vessels pursued them methodically. Even without understanding the language or knowing the species involved, the scenario was one humanity had seen countless times in its own history. "How long until we reach them?" Lee asked. 2 minutes, sir," Kang replied. Lee made his decision. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization would not be as passive observers to what appeared to be an attack on civilians. "Battle stations," he ordered. "Sound general quarters." The bridge lighting shifted to red as the alarm sounded throughout the ship. Crew members who had been resting or off-duty rushed to their positions. "Sir," Song called out, "the translation program has processed enough of the transmissions. They're refugee ships. They're broadcasting that they're unarmed and carrying civilians." "And the pursuers?" "The refugees are referring to them as variant destroyers. The messages indicate the refugees are fleeing from something called the Variant Empire." Lee nodded grimly. Politics might differ across galaxies, but the story of refugees fleeing oppression seemed universal. "Tactical, prepare to position us between the refugee ships and their pursuers. Communications, prepare a standard first contact message, but add that we are offering protection to the civilian vessels." The bridge crew worked quickly, tension evident in their movements, but not hampering their efficiency. The Valiant accelerated, its massive bulk now visible to both the fleeing refugees and the pursuing destroyers. On the main screen, Lee could now see the vessels clearly. The refugee ships were small, roughly the size of Earth's early space shuttles, with bulbous hulls that suggested they were designed for transport rather than combat. Their surfaces were scorched from weapons fire, and several showed signs of serious damage. The pursuing vessels were sleek, predatory craft with sharp angles and weapon ports clearly visible along their hulls. They moved with practiced precision, methodically cutting off escape routes for the fleeing ships. "We're within range, Captain," Bai announced. "The Variant vessels have altered course. They appear to be scanning us. Position us directly between them and the refugee fleet," Lee ordered. "Lieutenant Song, broadcast our message on all frequencies." The massive Terran Battleship moved into position, its hull dwarfing both the refugee ships and the Variant destroyers. From the perspective of both alien groups, the sudden appearance of an enormous unknown vessel must have been shocking. "Message sent, sir," Song confirmed. No response yet from either group. "The Variant vessels have ceased pursuit of the refugees," they reported. "They're turning toward us. Energy readings indicate they're charging weapon systems." Lee had expected this. First contact situations were delicate under the best circumstances. This was far from the best circumstances. "All hands, brace for potential hostile action," he announced shipwide. "Maintain defensive posture only. Do not return fire unless ordered." 10 seconds passed as the Variant destroyers completed their turn, now facing the Valiant directly. "Captain," Song called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead Variant vessel. Audio only. Put it through." The bridge speakers emitted a series of harsh, clipped sounds that the translation software struggled to process. After a moment, an approximation came through. "Unknown vessel, you interfere with Imperial business. Remove yourself or be destroyed. You have 10 seconds to comply." Lee exchanged glances with his first officer, Commander Jang. They had discussed first contact protocols extensively during the journey, but nothing had prepared them for starting with a direct threat. "Send this response," Lee instructed. "This is Captain Lee of the Terran ship Valiant. We are visitors to this galaxy and observe that you are attacking unarmed civilian vessels. We request cessation of hostilities while we establish diplomatic communication." The response came almost immediately, the alien voice somehow conveying disdain even through the imperfect translation. "Your request is denied. Your interference is noted. Prepare to be removed." "Sir," Ba called out urgently, "they're firing." The tactical display showed energy weapons launching from all 3 Variant vessels simultaneously, bright beams of greenish light streaking toward the Valiant. "Shields at maximum," Choi confirmed, his fingers dancing across his console to reinforce the defensive systems. The bridge crew tensed, many experiencing their first real combat situation. The Valiant had been tested extensively during its construction and shakedown cruise, but never against actual hostile fire. The green beams struck the Valiant's shields. Rather than the catastrophic impact many had feared, The energy seemed to ripple across the shield's surface, dissipating in waves of blue light. The ship shuddered slightly, but remained stable. Shield status. Lee demanded. Choi checked his readings twice before answering, his voice containing barely suppressed excitement. Shields holding at 97%, sir. The impact was significantly lower than our test simulations predicted for weapons of this yield. A murmur of relief passed through the bridge crew. They're firing again, Bod warned. A second volley struck the Valiant, more concentrated than the first. Again, the shields absorbed and dissipated the energy. Shields at 95%, Captain, Choi reported. The computer is already adapting our shield frequency to better counter their weapons. Lee allowed himself a small smile. The shield technology derived from the Mars artifact was performing even better than expected. What had seemed like deadly weapons fire was barely scratching their defenses. Sir, Song interrupted, we're receiving transmissions from the refugee vessels. There, they appear to be expressing amazement. The translation is rough, but they're saying no one has ever withstood Variant weapons before. The Variant destroyers fired a third time, concentrating all their weapons on a single point of the Valiant's shields. The battleship shuddered more noticeably this time, but still held firm. Shields at 91%, Choi reported. No critical systems affected. Captain, Commander Jang spoke quietly beside Lee. We should consider a response. If we merely defend, they may bring reinforcements. Lee nodded. Tactical. Target the weapon systems of the lead vessel only. Minimum power. I want to disable, not destroy. Targeting, sir, Ba confirmed. Ready on your order. Fire. The Valiant's forward weapons port glowed briefly before releasing a controlled pulse of energy. The beam struck the lead Variant destroyer precisely where its main weapon was mounted. The smaller ship rocked from the impact, and a section of its hull visibly darkened. Direct hit, Bay reported. Their main weapon system appears offline. No hull breach detected. The response was immediate. The three Variant vessels broke formation, accelerating rapidly away from the Valiant. They're retreating, Captain, Bai announced, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. Track them, but do not pursue, Lee ordered. He turned to communications. Lieutenant Song, establish contact with the refugee vessels. Let them know we mean no harm and offer assistance if needed. As Song began transmitting the message, the bridge crew exchanged looks of cautious optimism. Their mission had taken an unexpected turn, but the Valiant had proven itself in its first encounter. Sir, Song reported, the refugee fleet is responding. Their leader wishes to speak with you. Lee straightened his uniform. Humanity's first official diplomatic contact with an alien species was about to begin. Put them through, he said, his voice calm despite the historic moment. And let's hope they're friendlier than the welcoming committee. Fleet Commander Drav slammed his fist against the command console, cracking its surface. The bridge crew of the Variant flagship Unrelenting Force flinched at the display of rage. Drav's gray skin had darkened to nearly black with fury as he replayed the sensor footage for the fourth time. Impossible, he roared, watching again as the strange vessel absorbed direct hits from three destroyers without showing signs of damage. Play it again. The tactical officer, trembling slightly, reset the footage. The massive unknown ship, larger than anything the Alliance races had ever fielded, simply sat in space while Variant energy weapons dissipated harmlessly against its shields. No vessel has ever withstood our ion cannons, Drav growled. Not one. In 300 years of warfare, nothing has survived a direct hit. He turned to his science officer. Explain. The science officer swallowed nervously. We cannot, Commander. Their shield technology operates on principles we've never encountered. Our initial scans show energy patterns that contradict our understanding of defensive systems. Drav narrowed his yellow eyes. Where did this ship come from? Who built it? Unknown, sir. It appeared at the galaxy's edge. Based on its trajectory and the radiation signature, it may have come from Outside our galaxy, a heavy silence fell over the bridge. The concept of intergalactic travel had been theorized, but never achieved by any known civilization. The 3 destroyers that engaged it have returned, Commander, reported the communications officer. Captain Min reports his main weapons array was disabled with a single shot from the unknown vessel. The weapon penetrated their shields as if they weren't there. Drav's breathing quickened with a mix of rage and something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Gather the battle group, he ordered. All ships. We will destroy this intruder before it can interfere further with Imperial business. As officers rushed to comply, Drav studied the image of the strange ship. Its design was unlike anything in Imperial records, blocky yet elegant, clearly built for both power and endurance. Most disturbingly, it bore markings in an unknown script. The translation computers had tentatively identified the ship as the Valiant from a race or entity called Terran. Whatever you are, Drav whispered, you will not stand against the full might of a Variant battle group. Aboard the TSS Valiant, Captain Lee called his senior officers to the situation room adjacent to the bridge. The large conference table displayed a holographic map of the surrounding sector, with the Valiant at the center and the retreating Variant ships marked in red. Report, Lee said simply. Science Officer Han, a slender woman with intense focus in her eyes, spoke first. We've analyzed their weapons signatures, Captain. Fascinating technology, actually. Their weapons operate by destabilizing molecular bonds at the quantum level. Against conventional shields, they're devastating. The energy passes through and disrupts the target's atomic structure directly. Yet our shields held, Lee observed. Han nodded, a hint of excitement in her voice. Precisely. Our phase-shifting shields, derived from the Mars artifact, don't try to block energy. They redistribute it across multiple dimensional phases. The Variant weapons can't maintain coherence across the phase difference. Captain Lee considered this. The shields that had seemed like an interesting theoretical advantage during their journey had just proven their value in actual combat. What about the refugees? He asked, turning to Communications Officer Song. They call themselves the Marani, Song replied. They're one of 12 species that form an alliance resisting Variant control. According to their leader, the Variant Empire controls roughly 75% of this galaxy and has been expanding for centuries. Their ion weapons made them virtually unstoppable until us, Lee finished. Have they made any requests? Yes, sir. They've asked for escort to their nearest outpost in something called the Crimson Nebula. It's approximately 3 light days from here. They believe the Variants will return with reinforcements. Lee nodded. Navigator Kang, plot a course to this Crimson Nebula. Tactical Officer Ba, maintain alert status. I want continuous scans for any Variant activity. As his officers moved to comply, Lee turned to his first officer. Commander Jang, your assessment. Jang considered carefully before speaking. We came for exploration and potential diplomatic contact. Instead, we've stepped into a galaxy-wide conflict and already engaged in combat with one side. The Prime Directive would suggest non-interference. The Prime Directive applies to developing civilizations, Lee replied. These are spacefaring species in a conflict where one side faces extinction, and we've already interfered by protecting the Marani. Your recommendation, sir. Lee studied the holographic display. We complete our escort mission. We learn more about this conflict. Then we make an informed decision about our next steps. He looked around the table. Any objections? There were none. The officers returned to their stations, and the Valiant set course for the Crimson Nebula. 3 days later, the Valiant entered the fringes of the Crimson Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust illuminated by the red light of a dying star at its center. The nebula's unique radiation properties made it difficult for Variant sensors to penetrate, explaining why the Alliance had established a base there. Navigator Kang guided the ship through swirling clouds of crimson gas, following coordinates provided by the Marani. Captain, Tactical Officer Ba called out suddenly, Multiple ships approaching from Sector 4. Lee tensed. Identification. Variant signatures, sir. A lot of them. I count 1 heavy cruiser, 6 destroyers, and multiple support vessels. Battle stations, Lee ordered calmly. Inform the Marani vessels to continue to their base while we handle this. The Valiant's crew moved with practiced efficiency. In the days since their first encounter, they had drilled repeatedly, preparing for the inevitable Variant response. They're hailing us, Captain, Song reported. On screen. The main view screen flickered to show a Variant officer. His gray skin and yellow eyes registered to human perception as distinctly alien, but his expression of contempt was universal. I am Fleet Commander Drav of the Variant Empire, the alien announced. Your vessel has interfered with Imperial operations and harbored fugitives. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Lee kept his expression neutral. This is Captain Lee of the TSS Valiant. We have no hostile intentions toward your empire, but we will not allow attacks on civilian vessels. Drav's eyes narrowed. You are outnumbered and outgunned, Captain. Your single ship cannot stand against a full battle group. Perhaps, Lee replied evenly. But I suggest you review the data from our previous encounter before making assumptions about our capabilities. Without waiting for a response, he signaled Song to cut the transmission. All hands, prepare for combat. Science Officer Han, are the shield modifications complete? Han nodded. Yes, sir. Based on our analysis of their weapons, we've optimized our shield harmonics. We should be able to absorb even more energy before experiencing degradation. Good. Tactical. Target their weapon systems only. I want to disable, not destroy if possible. Understood, Captain. Outside the Valiant, the Variant ships moved into an attack formation, surrounding the Terran vessel. From their perspective, the outcome seemed inevitable. 14 combat vessels against 1. The Variant cruiser opened fire first, its main ion cannon sending a concentrated beam of energy toward the Valiant. The beam struck the shields, creating a ripple of blue light as the energy dispersed across the phase-shifting barrier. Shields holding at 98%, reported Officer Choi. Return fire, Lee ordered. Target their main weapon array. The Valiant's forward batteries fired precisely, striking the Variant cruiser's main weapon assembly. Unlike the Variant weapons, the Terran energy beams punched through the alien shields, causing a small explosion where they hit. Direct hit, Ba confirmed. Their main weapon is offline. The Variant destroyers moved in, firing simultaneously from multiple angles. The Valiant shuddered as energy impacted from all sides. Shields at 92%, Choi reported. Holding steady. Lee studied the tactical display. The Variant were trying to overwhelm their shields through sheer volume of fire. It was a sound strategy against conventional defenses, but against the Valiant's technology, it merely provided more energy for the shields to redistribute. Science Officer Han, can we modify our shields to reflect some of their energy back at them? Lee asked. Han's eyes widened at the suggestion. Theoretically, yes. If we recalibrate the phase harmonics at the point of impact. Her fingers flew across her console. Attempting now, sir. The next volley from the Variant ships struck the Valiant's shields, and something unexpected happened. Where the energy beams hit, the shields glowed more intensely, and then pulses of energy shot back along the path of the incoming beams. 3 Variant destroyers rocked as their own energy was redirected back at them. It worked, Han exclaimed. We're reflecting approximately 30% of their weapon energy back to the source. The Variant ships faltered, their formation breaking as several vessels dealt with unexpected damage. Press the advantage, Lee ordered. Target the engines of the 3 damaged destroyers. The Valiant fired again, precise shots disabling the engines of the 3 Variant ships that had been hit by their own reflected energy. Unable to maneuver, they drifted helplessly. Commander Drav, watching from his flagship, saw the impossible happening again. Not only was the alien vessel withstanding concentrated fire from his entire battle group, but it was now reflecting their own weapons against them and systematically disabling his ships one by one. Intensify forward firepower. Drav screamed at his weapons officer. Concentrate all remaining ships on their bridge section. The remaining Variant vessels adjusted their aim, focusing on a single point on the Valiant's hull where they presumed the command center was located. The combined energy of 7 ships struck the same shield segment simultaneously. Aboard the Valiant, the impact was finally felt. The ship rocked violently, and several bridge stations sparked with power surges. Shields down to 67% in that sector, Choi reported, his voice tense but controlled. They've identified a potential weakness in our distribution network. Lee remained calm. Rotate shield harmonics. Target the weapons systems of those 7 ships. Sequential fire, maximum power. The Valiant's weapons spoke again, each shot striking with devastating accuracy. One by one, the Variant vessels lost their primary weapons. The battle continued for another 20 minutes, but the outcome was already determined. Despite being outnumbered, the Valiant's superior technology gave it an insurmountable advantage. By the time Commander Drav ordered a retreat, 3 Variant destroyers were disabled and adrift. 2 more had suffered significant damage to their weapons and propulsion systems, and even his flagship had lost half its offensive capability. As the remaining Variant ships limped away, the crew of the Valiant allowed themselves brief celebrations. They had faced their first true battle test and emerged victorious. But Captain Lee knew this was just the beginning. Word of this encounter would spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. The invincible Variant had been defeated. A legend was born this day, a legend of the ship from beyond the stars that could withstand the unstoppable weapons of the Empire. And somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, the rulers of the Variant Empire would soon learn that their 3-century reign of unchallenged dominance had come to an end. The Imperial Palace on Variant Prime glowed with an eerie green light as the High Command gathered in the war chamber. 12 commanders sat around a circular table of polished black stone, their faces grim. At the head of the table, Emperor Toll himself had come to address the crisis, an unprecedented honor that underscored the gravity of the situation. 3 battles, Emperor Toll said, his voice deceptively soft. 3 defeats, 17 ships damaged or destroyed, and still this alien vessel remains untouched. He touched a control, and a holographic image of the Valiant appeared above the table. Explain to me how this is possible. The military leaders shifted uncomfortably. Fleet Commander Drav, still bearing wounds from the battle in the Crimson Nebula, spoke first. Imperial Majesty, the vessel uses shield technology, unlike anything we have encountered. Our ion weapons, which have broken every defense system for 3 centuries, are ineffective against it. And what of the reports that this ship has shared its technology with the Rebel Alliance? The Emperor asked. Supreme Commander Rule answered. Confirmed, Majesty. Our intelligence indicates the Terran vessel has docked at the main Alliance base. They appear to be modifying Alliance ships with their shield technology. The Emperor's face remained expressionless, but his eyes burned with cold fury. So not only has this single ship defeated our forces, but it now threatens to arm our enemies with the means to resist us. He turned to the oldest member of the High Command. Admiral Grex, you have served the Empire for 200 years. What do you recommend? Admiral Grex had remained silent until now. His skin, once gray like all Variants, had paled to nearly white with age. His eyes, however, remained sharp and calculating. Deploy the Dominion, he said simply. A murmur ran through the assembled commanders. The Dominion was the Empire's most closely guarded secret, a warship 3 times the size of any other vessel in their fleet, equipped with a weapon so powerful it could shatter small moons. The Dominion has never been used in actual combat, one commander objected. It is our ultimate deterrent. What good is a deterrent that remains unused when our very empire is threatened? Grex countered. I have commanded the Dominion since its construction. I know its capabilities. This Terran ship, powerful as it may be, cannot withstand the quantum disruptor. Emperor Toll considered this momentarily. The Dominion was built for a day we hoped would never come. That day has arrived. He stood, signaling his decision. Admiral Grex, you will take command of the Dominion with a single objective: eliminate the Terran threat and any vessels that have been modified with their technology. Grex bowed his head. It shall be done, Imperial Majesty. And Grex, the Emperor added, failure is not an option. The Empire has never known defeat. I do not intend to experience it now. On the Alliance homeworld of Narration, Captain Lee stood before representatives of 12 different species. The Alliance Council chamber was carved into the side of a mountain for protection against orbital bombardment. The curved walls were lined with the flags and symbols of member worlds, many now conquered by the variant. The shield technology we're offering can be adapted to your ships, Lee explained, gesturing to a holographic display showing the modifications. It won't make your vessels invulnerable, but it will neutralize the variant's primary advantage. Admiral Jin, the Alliance military leader, studied the schematics with hope in his eyes. How long will these modifications take? Engineer Kang stepped forward. She had been working day and night since their arrival, studying Alliance ship designs. With your engineers assisting, we can modify a cruiser-sized vessel in approximately 3 days, she answered. Smaller ships will take less time. Murmurs of excitement spread through the council. For the first time in generations, they had a defense against the variant's devastating weapons. And what do you ask in return, Captain? Asked Counselor Tai, her voice cautious. Long years of war had taught the Alliance to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true. An alliance, Lee replied simply. Earth is new to this galaxy. We need allies, information, and eventually, trade partners. We offer our technology freely, asking only for friendship and cooperation in return. The counselors exchanged glances. What the Terrans offered seemed genuine. But the timing raised questions. Admiral Jin voiced what many were thinking. Why involve yourselves in our war? You could have simply explored elsewhere once you realized the situation here. Lee considered his answer carefully. When we left Earth, we hoped to find new civilizations, establish peaceful contact, and expand humanity's understanding of the universe. Instead, we found people suffering under the boot of an empire that crushes all resistance. He paused. My people have a saying. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We chose not to do nothing. A respectful silence followed his words. Then Admiral Jin stood. The Alliance accepts your offer, Captain Lee. We will begin retrofitting our remaining fleet immediately. As the meeting concluded, Communications Officer Song approached Lee privately. Captain, we've received a response from Earth, she said, handing him a data tablet. Lee read the message, his expression brightening. Well, it seems we won't be alone much longer. Earth is sending reinforcements. 3 weeks later, a section of space near the Crimson Nebula rippled as a dimensional gateway opened. One by one, 4 massive ships emerged. Terran battleships similar to the Valiant, but each with slight variations in design and armament. On the Valiant's bridge, Captain Lee watched with pride as Earth's first intergalactic battle fleet formed up alongside his vessel. The TSS Resolute, Defiant, Intrepid, and Dauntless all report ready for action, Captain, Song announced. Admiral Yang sends his compliments and awaits your briefing. Lee nodded. Prepare the conference room and notify Alliance Command that our reinforcements have arrived. The arrival of additional Terran battleships changed the strategic situation dramatically. No longer was the Valiant a lone technological marvel. Now 5 Earth vessels with the same advanced shielding patrolled Alliance space. Meanwhile, Engineer Kang had exceeded all expectations. Working with Alliance technicians, she had modified 27 Alliance vessels with variants of the Terran shield technology. The smaller ships couldn't generate the full phase-shifting effect of the Terran battleships, but even their partial protection was enough to neutralize the variant's primary advantage. For the first time in centuries, the Varant Empire faced a force that could challenge their military supremacy. Deep in Varant territory, the massive shipyards orbiting the industrial world of Corvus had been cleared of all personnel except those with the highest security clearance. The Dominion emerged from its hidden dock for the first time in 50 years. The vessel dwarfed everything around it. At 15 kilometers long, it resembled a massive arrowhead, its black hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Along its ventral surface ran a groove that pulsed with ominous green energy, the emitter for the quantum disruptor, a weapon that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. On the command bridge, Admiral Grex surveyed his crew. They were the best the Empire had to offer, handpicked for this mission. The Terrans believe their technology has changed the balance of power. Grex addressed them. They are wrong. The Dominion will remind this galaxy why the Varant Empire has ruled unchallenged for centuries. He gestured to the navigation officer. Set course for the Alliance homeworld. Maximum speed. As the massive vessel accelerated toward its target, Grex reviewed the intelligence reports on the Terran vessels. 5 battleships now, all with the same shield technology that had frustrated their ion weapons, and dozens of Alliance ships newly equipped with similar defenses. It was an impressive force by any standard. But Grex felt no concern. The quantum disruptor didn't just attack shields or hulls. It unraveled the very fabric of space-time in its target area. No defense, not even the Terran's miraculous shields, could withstand that. On Narration, the combined Terran Alliance fleet prepared for battle. Intelligence had detected a massive Varant vessel moving toward their position, accompanied by a substantial escort fleet. In the Alliance Command Center, Captain Lee and Admiral Yang met with Alliance leaders to finalize their strategy. "We have confirmation," Admiral Jin reported grimly. "The Varants have deployed a weapon called the Dominion. Our sources indicate it's a super weapon of unprecedented power." Admiral Yang, a veteran of Earth's own interplanetary conflicts, studied the intelligence data. Dimensions suggest a Dreadnought-class vessel, but the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this weapon is, it's not just another ion cannon. Can our shields withstand it? Counselor Tai asked, looking to the Terran officers. Lee and Yang exchanged glances. "Unknown," Lee admitted. "Our shields have proven effective against their standard weapons, but without knowing the nature of this new threat, we can't make guarantees." Engineer Kang, who had joined the meeting, spoke up. "We've been studying the Varant ion technology. It operates on principles similar to weapons Earth developed centuries ago, but abandoned because of their instability. If the Dominion uses an advanced version of the same technology, there may be an inherent weakness we can exploit." "Explain," Admiral Yang prompted. "Ion weapons disrupt molecular bonds by targeting specific quantum frequencies," Kang said. "If their superweapon works on similar principles, but at a larger scale, it would require an enormous amount of energy that must be contained somehow before firing." "A capacitor system," Lee realized. "Exactly," Kang nodded. "And any capacitor, no matter how advanced, has a resonance frequency. If we can determine that frequency and hit it with a precisely tuned energy pulse during their charging sequence, we could trigger a catastrophic overload." Admiral Yang finished, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Admiral Jin looked skeptical. "That would require getting close enough to scan the weapon while it's charging, but before it fires. The risk would be extraordinary." "War is risk, Admiral," Yang replied simply. "But I agree. We need more information before we can attempt such a strategy." As the meeting continued, a young Alliance officer burst into the room. "Sirs, long-range sensors have detected the Dominion entering the outer system. Its current trajectory will bring it to Narration in less than 6 hours." The room fell silent as the reality sank in. The decisive battle would come sooner than anyone had expected. The fate of the Alliance, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would soon be determined. Captain Lee looked around at the assembled leaders, both human and alien. Despite their different appearances, he recognized the same determination in all their eyes. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Prepare for battle." The orange-red dawn broke over the horizon of Narration as the combined Terran Alliance fleet took up defensive positions in high orbit. 5 Terran battleships formed the core of the formation, surrounded by 37 Alliance vessels of various sizes. The 5 Terran battleships moved into a tight formation, with Alliance vessels positioned strategically behind them. The plan was simple but dangerous. The Terran ships would absorb the initial attack, scanning the Dominion's weapon as it fired, while the Alliance vessels stood ready to strike once the resonance frequency was identified. On the bridge of the Dominion, Admiral Grex watched the enemy formation with interest. "They cluster together," he observed to his second-in-command. "A strange tactic against a weapon of our power." "Perhaps they believe their combined shields will protect them," the officer suggested. Grex smiled coldly. "A miscalculation they will not live to regret. Begin charging the quantum disruptor. Target their center formation." The Dominion's massive weapon emitter glowed brighter as power built within its systems. Smaller variant vessels moved to the sides, giving the superweapon a clear firing line. Aboard the Valiant, Science Officer Hand called out, "Captain, we're detecting an enormous energy buildup in the Dominion's main weapon. The readings are unlike anything we've seen. It appears to be creating a quantum field distortion. All ships, scan that energy signature," Lee ordered through the fleet-wide channel. "Look for resonance patterns in the containment systems." As the Dominion's weapon reached 80% charge, the variant escort ships opened fire. Streams of green energy lanced toward the Terran Alliance fleet. The Valiant shuddered as multiple ion beams struck its shields. "Shields holding at 87%, reported Officer Choi. "The modified harmonics are working. They're concentrating fire on our flagship," Song reported as another volley rocked the ship. Lee gripped the command rail, studying both the incoming fire and the energy readings from the Dominion. Suddenly, a pattern emerged in the data streaming across his tactical display. "Their weapons," he murmured, then with more certainty, "their weapons create a feedback loop when they interact with our shields. We can use that." He opened the command channel. "All Terran vessels, adjust shield harmonics to frequency 4.72. Arrange in spear formation. Now." The 5 Terran battleships rapidly shifted position, forming a triangle with the Valiant at the point, the other 4 ships creating the base. As they moved, their shields changed frequency, beginning to resonate with each other. "Captain, what are you doing?" Admiral Jin's voice came through, alarm evident in his tone. "No time to explain," Lee responded. "Alliance vessels, maintain your positions behind our formation." On the Dominion, Admiral Grex watched the enemy's maneuver with confusion. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral," his tactical officer replied. "They appear to be linking their shields somehow." Grex dismissed the concern. "It makes no difference. The quantum disruptor will tear through any defense. Weapon at full charge. Fire." The Dominion's main emitter flashed brilliant green as it released its devastating weapon. A massive beam of energy, wider than some ships, lanced toward the Terran formation. Aboard the Valiant, Lee gave his final order. "All ships, maximum power to forward shields. Modulate to receive and redirect." The beam struck the point of the Terran formation, directly at the Valiant. For a horrifying moment, the ship's shields flared so brightly that the bridge crew had to shield their eyes. Systems overloaded, consoles sparked, and the hull groaned under the strain. But instead of penetrating the shields, something remarkable happened. The energy began to flow around the Valiant, channeled by its shield harmonics into the other 4 Terran ships. Their shields, tuned to the same frequency, captured the energy and amplified it. "It's working," Hand shouted over the sound of straining systems. "The shield network is redistributing the energy." The 5 Terran ships now glowed with contained power, their linked shields forming a perfect circuit. The energy of the Dominion's superweapon, instead of destroying its targets, had been captured. Now, Lee commanded, redirect all ships together. In perfect synchronization, the 5 Terran battleships adjusted their shield harmonics, creating a feedback wave that sent the accumulated energy shooting back toward the Varant fleet, amplified and focused into a single devastating beam. The redirected energy struck the Dominion directly in its main weapon emitter. The superweapon, still recovering from discharging its massive attack, had no defense against its own energy returned upon it. The feedback penetrated its systems, creating a cascade failure that ripped through its power network. Secondary explosions blossomed along the Dominion's hull. The great ship listed to one side as entire sections lost power. Around it, Varant vessels caught in the energy backwash suffered similar fates, weapon systems failing, engines shutting down, shields collapsing. On the Valiant's bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as their desperate gambit succeeded beyond all expectations. "Damage report," Lee requested, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Shields at 12%, multiple systems offline," Choi reported. "But hull integrity is maintained. We're still in the fight, Captain." Lee nodded, then opened a channel to the fleet. "All Alliance vessels, move in now. Secure those disabled ships before they can recover." The Alliance ships surged forward, their newly installed shields deflecting the weakened fire from the remaining operational Varant vessels. They surrounded the crippled Dominion and began disabling the escort ships one by one. Admiral Yang's face appeared on the view screen. "Captain Lee, I don't know how you did that, but it was the most remarkable thing I've ever seen." Lee allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the best defense is to use your enemy's strength against them. The Varants have relied on overwhelming power for so long, they never considered what might happen if that power was redirected. As the Alliance vessels secured their victories across the battlefield, Communications Officer Song called out, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Dominion." "On screen," Lee ordered. The image of Admiral Grex appeared, his command center dark with emergency lighting casting shadows across his face. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, but his posture remained proud. "Captain of the Terran vessel," he began formally. "You have achieved what no force has managed in 3 centuries. The Dominion is disabled. Many of our fleet are without power. I am authorized by the Emperor to request terms." A hush fell over the Valiant's bridge. The request was unprecedented. The Varant Empire had never negotiated with enemies. They conquered or withdrew to fight another day. Lee met the Admiral's gaze steadily. "We will discuss terms, Admiral Grex, but they must include recognition of the alliance of free worlds and cessation of all hostilities against them." Grex's expression remained stoic, but he gave a slight nod. "The Emperor will hear your terms." As the transmission ended, the bridge crew of the Valiant finally allowed themselves to celebrate. Cheers erupted, crew members embraced, and the tension of battle gave way to the elation of victory. Lee moved to the viewport, gazing out at the fleet of disabled Varant ships and the triumphant Alliance vessels securing them. After centuries of oppression, the balance of power had shifted in a single battle. Later, as the Alliance leaders gathered with the Terran captains to discuss the path forward, Admiral Jin raised a toast. "To the Terrans," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "who showed us that even the mightiest empire can be defeated when free people stand together." Captain Lee raised his glass in return. "And to a new chapter in this galaxy's history, one written not by conquerors but by allies." As celebrations continued across Alliance space, news of the battle spread like wildfire. The invincible Varants had been defeated. The unstoppable Dominion had been disabled by its own weapon. And a new power had emerged, humans from beyond the galaxy, whose technology and tactics had changed everything. The stars themselves seemed brighter that night as citizens of countless worlds looked to the sky with something they had almost forgotten: hope.